You're listening to the Dibbly Dobbly Podcast. Remember to like, share, comment, subscribe, and click the bell to make sure you get the latest episodes of the podcast. Be sure to like and share our Facebook page and follow us on Twitter and on Instagram. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Dibbly Dobbly Podcast. On today's episode, we're previewing the ICC Champions Trophy for 2025, which will be hosted in Pakistan and the UAE. And for the first time since 2017, the Champions Trophy is back after an 8-year hiatus. Also for the first time since 1996, that Pakistan will host an ICC tournament going back nearly 30 years now since they last hosted an ICC tournament, Pakistan, and that was the World Cup back in 1996 when it was in the subcontinent that year. The top 8 teams in ODI cricket will descend on Pakistan and the UAE to battle it out for the Champions Trophy. Can Pakistan defend their Champions Trophy title on home soil, or will a new winner emerge, or will a past winner take out the Champions Trophy in 2025? Only time will tell at the end of the tournament who will lift up the Champions Trophy on the podium at the end of the final, come the end of the tournament. Only time will tell. But Champions Trophy is back after 8 years, as I mentioned, and it's sort of one of those tournaments, really, the Champions Trophy, that's sort of in the middle, one of those tournaments that come out of the blue every now and again. So it's back after it was defunct. Now it's back, and it's back in Pakistan, and it's sure to be some interesting cricket, no doubt. And definitely 8 teams that are definitely capable of performing and definitely winning the tournament as a whole. So plenty to talk about and discuss. We'll talk about all of the 8 teams, have a look at their squads in this preview, talk about their chances in this Champions Trophy, talk about who's going to win, who's going to make the semi-finals, who's going to be the leading run scorer, leading wicket taker for the tournament, all of that stuff in this episode of the podcast today. So plenty to talk about, plenty to discuss. And without further ado, let's get straight into it. Now, before we do all that, let's just recap with the format and how the Champions Trophy works, really. Go over the format and basically how the tournament is structured for those who may not know. Basically, it's quite simple. The structure and the format of the tournament, you have 2 groups of 4 teams in the group stage. So Group A, Group B have 4 teams each. The top 2 teams in each group will advance to the semi-finals from the 2 groups. So the top 2 teams in each group advance to the semi-finals. The winner of the semi-finals will advance to the final. And obviously the winner of the final will be crowned the Champion Trophy winners. So it's pretty much simple format and structure, really. And basically 2 groups, Group A, Group B. In Group A, we have Pakistan, India, New Zealand, and Bangladesh. In Group B, we have Australia, England, South Africa, and Afghanistan. So that's pretty much the format and the structure of the Champions Trophy. Pretty simple, an easy tournament structure to understand. Basically, short, sharp, and quick. Every team plays 3 games, and every game counts. You can't afford to lose 1 or 2 games, otherwise that could be the end of your Champions Trophy. So a short, sharp, and quick tournament, and no doubt it will provide some entertainment across the next few weeks in terms of this Champions Trophy. So basically that's the format and the structure for the Champions Trophy. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. Now then, let's preview the ICC Champions Trophy for 2025, go through all the 8 teams, go through their squads, and talk about their chances of winning this Champions Trophy in Pakistan and the UAE. First of all, let's start with Group A. Talk about Group A in terms of the teams that are in Group A for this Champions Trophy. Pakistan, India, New Zealand, and Bangladesh. First of all, let's talk about Pakistan, who are the host nation and defending champions of the Champions Trophy. So their captain is Mohammad Rizwan. They have won an ICC Champions Trophy before Pakistan. That was back in 2017. and they were the champions in the 2017 edition of the Champions Trophy. The squad they have selected is as follows: Rizwan, Azam, Zaman, Shakil, Tahir, Usman Khan, Salman, Ashraf, Ghulam, Shah, Abrar, Ralph, Hassanain, Naseem Shah, and Shaheen Shah Afridi. And that's the squad that Pakistan have selected for this Champions Trophy. Host nation, Pakistan, extra motivation to win the Champions Trophy and defend their 2017 title on home soil. Which Pakistan team will turn up? That's the question. They've got the players to perform, but can they put it together? That's the question. That's always the thing with Pakistan. They're always exciting country to watch, because you never know what's going to happen. You never know what's going to happen with Pakistan. They can either be good or bad. They can be very ordinary and don't perform as well as we expect. So that will be the thing for Pakistan. Obviously, they want to do well because it's their home tournament. First time since 1996 that they're hosting an ICC event. They would like to do well. They would like to win the tournament. They've got the players to do it. They've got match winners. You've got Rizwan, you've got Babar Azam, you've got Saman at the top of the order. You've got Shaheen Shah Afridi, Naseem Shah with the bowling side of things. So they've got all bases covered. It's just whether or not they can put it together, Pakistan, and just really handle the expectations and the pressure. That's going to be the thing for Pakistan. If they are going to win this tournament, they will have to handle the pressure and expectations. And that's been the problem for Pakistan for some time, is that pressure and expectations. And that's often why they play so poorly, because they can't handle the pressure and the expectations of the whole nation, and especially in tournaments. Now, the last two ICC tournaments, they haven't done well. The 2023 World Cup in India, it was a pretty ordinary tournament from them. Last year's T20 World Cup in the West Indies and the USA, I should say, didn't really perform well, didn't even make it to the Super 8s. So they'll be hoping for a better performance in this Champions Trophy. They've got match winners, as I mentioned. Coming into the tournament, they've done quite well in one-day cricket. They've won quite a few series. They defeated Australia 2-1 in that ODI series. They defeated Zimbabwe 2-1, and also South Africa 3-0 in South Africa. And obviously the Tri Series with New Zealand and South Africa before this tournament started. They made it to the final of the Tri Series, but they lost the final against New Zealand. So Pakistan come into this tournament with a bit of form under their belt in the one-day format and got that momentum. It's just whether or not Pakistan can translate that form going into the Champions Trophy. And it's big expectations. You know, for a lot of these players, it will be the first time that they're playing a major tournament in front of their home crowd. And whatever you can say about the Champions Trophy, its relevance and why do we even have it, because it comes out of the blue every now and again. But you've got to remember that it's so important for the people of Pakistan to have cricket back, especially an ICC tournament. They've been deprived of cricket for so long. So you can understand the pressure and the expectations that all of these players have. Many of these Pakistan players grew up watching their idols and watching cricket in Pakistan, and then being deprived of that for so long, and then to finally have the opportunity to play at home is a great honor. So there's a lot of pressure on Pakistan, as there always is. Whether or not they can turn up or not is the question. You know, they've got a chance of winning the tournament. You know, it's at home. They're the host nation. There's motivation. They want to win. They're passionate, as we know, Pakistan. But it's whether or not we get the good or the bad Pakistan. That's the question. Which Pakistan will turn up? That will be the question, whether or not Pakistan go on to win this Champions Trophy and defend their title. Only time will tell. Now then, let's move on and talk about India, and talk about India's squad and their chances of winning this Champions Trophy. Their captain is Rohit Sharma, and India have won 2 ICC tournaments in terms of Champions Trophies. They won in 2002, which was shared with Sri Lanka in that final, because the final was washed out, and both Sri Lanka and India shared the 2002 Champions Trophy, and then they won the 2013 Champions Trophy in England. They defeated England in the final at Edgbaston in that edition of the Champions Trophy. The 2017 Champions Trophy, they were the runners-up to Pakistan in the final. It was a very entertaining final between Pakistan and India in that Champions Trophy final back in 2017 at the Oval. Unfortunately, India lost by 180 runs, and it was an absolute dominant performance by Pakistan. The Indian squad that they've selected for this Champions Trophy is as follows: Rohit Sharma, Gill, Iyer, Kohli, Pant, KL Rahul, Jadeja, Hardik Pandya, Axel Patel, Sundar, Ashdeep Singh, Rana, Kuldeep Yadav, Shami, and Chakravarti. And you have to say that India go into this tournament as favourites. It's no secret. Just like the 50-over World Cup 2 years ago, India go into this tournament as favourites because they have a pretty good squad. They have a squad full of match winners. You've got Rohit Sharma, Gill, Iyer, Kohli, Pant, Jadeja, Hardik Pandya, Patel. Mohammad Shami returns after injury. Chakravarti's done well in his career. So they've got a lot of match winners, India. And they don't have Jasprit Bumrah because of his injury to his back. Obviously, that he picked up during the last test against Australia at the SCG during the Border Gavaskar Trophy. So they don't have Jasprit Bumrah, but they do have Mohammad Shami, who returns after a long layoff because of injury. They've selected a strong squad, as I mentioned, full of match winners with bat and ball. Rohit Sharma, Virat Kohli, in a bit of a form slump, as we know, of late. But both of them, during the England ODI series, scored some runs. Rohit Sharma scored 100. Hopefully that will boost his confidence, getting it out of this form slump. Against England, he scored that 100 in that series. Virat Kohli scored a 50 in the England ODI series as well that India played. So he's getting some sort of confidence going into this Champions Trophy. Obviously, India going into this Champions Trophy recently defeated England 3-0 in the ODI series recently in India. So that was a pretty convincing performance. So they're full of confidence going into this tournament, India. Looking to win back-to-back ICC tournaments to follow their T20 World Cup victory last year. And obviously looking to win this Champions Trophy to go back-to-back in terms of ICC tournaments, India. And before they won the T20 World Cup last year, their last ICC tournament win was the 2013 Champions Trophy. So to finally break the drought last year with the T20 World Cup and obviously hoping to win this Champions Trophy, for India, all of a sudden they're winning tournaments yet again. But you expect India to dominate with the squad that they have. They are the favourites. They do have an advantage of playing all their games in Dubai. Now, we all know the reasons why they are in Dubai. Obviously, with Pakistan and India, it's a very complicated situation and issue. We all know the reasons. We won't go into them. But they do have an advantage of playing in Dubai. And so other teams in their group, like Pakistan, New Zealand, Bangladesh, will have to travel from Pakistan to Dubai, get used to different conditions because Pakistan and the UAE are very different conditions. So India do have an advantage of playing all their games in Dubai and then obviously playing the semi-final in Dubai if they make it, and also the final if they make it as well. So they do have an advantage over all the other teams in this tournament to hopefully take out the tournament as a whole. They didn't get the job done in the 2023 World Cup. Can they get the job done in this Champions Trophy? That will be the question for India. Now, with this Champions Trophy title, if they do win it, India, will it make up for the World Cup in 2023? Probably not, because of the Champions Trophy and the World Cup. If you ask people which one's important, many people would say probably the World Cup's important than the Champions Trophy, given its preference of choice. And I think many people would say that. But for India, I suppose it's sort of like a consolation prize. I suppose that World Cup for them 2 years ago was meant meant for them to win, but they didn't do it. And I suppose Champions Trophy is another, probably the second best thing, I suppose, than winning a World Cup. But only time will tell. They've got a squad that's capable. They're very strong. They look like the favourites to win, but that's not guaranteed. Nothing's guaranteed in cricket. Nothing's guaranteed in sport. You can't just say, "Oh, we're the favourites. We should win." You don't know what's going to happen. So only time will tell at the end of the tournament whether or not they are the winners of this tournament in India. But they've got some players. They've got some good players with bat and ball, match winners. They've got what it takes to win the tournament. Let's see how India can do in this Champions Trophy. Definitely one of the favourites, definitely one of the teams to definitely beat in this Champions Trophy for 2025. Let's move on and talk about New Zealand and have a look at their squad and talk about their chances in this Champions Trophy. Their captain is Mitchell Santner. They have won an ICC Champions Trophy New Zealand. That was back in 2000, which was the second ever Champions Trophy to be contested. And that was in Kenya in that year. And they defeated India in the final. New Zealand, they won by 4 wickets in the final in 2000 to claim their first ever ICC tournament in their history. In the 2017 Champions Trophy, they finished in the group stage. The squad they have selected as follows: Santner, Conway, Latham, Williamson, Young, Bracewell, Chapman, Mitchell, Phillips, Ravinder, Smith, Duffy, Jamison, Henry, and O'Rourke. And that's the squad that New Zealand have assembled for this Champions Trophy. And you have to say that New Zealand are probably one of the favourites as well, along with India, probably one of the favourites to win. They've got a really good squad. They've been playing some good ODI cricket into the lead-up of this tournament. They're always a team that's thereabouts, New Zealand. They have done well in ICC tournaments over the years. They've made it to semi-finals and finals, but haven't quite got the job done in those semi-finals and finals over the years. They've got a new captain in Mitchell Santner leading the ODI team for the first time in a major tournament for New Zealand. Going into this Champions Trophy, they won the tri-series against Pakistan and South Africa. They did well in that tournament. They played some good cricket, and they won the tri-series against Pakistan and New Zealand in Pakistan in the lead-up to this Champions Trophy. They've got match winners. You've got Williamson, Latham, Mitchell, Phillips, Conway, Ravinder, with the bat, with the ball. You've got Santner, who can bowl well with his spin. Matt Henry has been there for a very long time. He's a very good bowler. You've got others who can do the job as well. So New Zealand have a squad that's capable of winning and really competing in this Champions Trophy. But the question is for New Zealand, can they finally get the job done? That's the question. They've been thereabouts in semi-finals and finals, but they haven't been able to get the job done and get over that final hurdle in terms of winning the tournament. Could this Champions Trophy be the year for New Zealand? Hopefully it is. If you're a New Zealand supporter, hopefully it is. But, for New Zealand, it is probably their best chance of winning a Champions Trophy. Going into this tournament, they look like one of the favourites along with India and maybe South Africa to take out the tournament. They look really good. So they've got a squad that's capable. They've got players who've been there for a very long time in one-day cricket, like Kane Williamson, Latham. They've been around for years. Santner's a veteran himself. Matt Henry as well. So they've got that experience in the side in terms of that ODI experience. And they know what to do, New Zealand. They're a very good fielding side. Very good in the field. They do the basics very well. And that's why they're one of the favourites to probably win this Champions Trophy and take out the title. But for New Zealand, the question will be, can they finally get over that final hurdle in terms of, winning the semi-final, then winning the final? We've seen in the past they haven't been able to do that. So can New Zealand get that done in this Champions Trophy? Only time will tell. But they've got a very good chance of taking out this Champions Trophy. They've got a very good squad. They've pretty much ticked all the boxes, really. And now it's just to get out there and perform. And if they can do that, then we'll probably see them in the semi-finals and hopefully in the final. But definitely New Zealand, you would think, can definitely take out this Champions Trophy. Only time will tell. Let's wait and see on that for New Zealand. And last but not least in Group A, let's talk about Bangladesh in terms of their chances of winning this Champions Trophy. Their captain is Nabajul Hossain Shanto. Bangladesh have not won a Champions Trophy in their history. They have not won a Champions Trophy title. And in 2017, in that Champions Trophy, Bangladesh made it to the semi-finals back in 2017. The squad that Bangladesh have selected for this Champions Trophy is as follows. Hussain Shanto, Jaker Ali, Rahman, Emon, Hassan Hildroy, Mahmudullah, Mehdi Hassan, Naseem Ahmed, Rishad Hassan, Saka, Shakib, Mustafizur Rahman, Rana, and Taskin Ahmed. And that's the squad that Bangladesh have selected for this Champions Trophy. Now, for Bangladesh, if we're honest, haven't really performed well across the last two ICC tournaments. 2023 World Cup in India, they performed pretty poorly. The T20 World Cup last year in the USA and the Caribbean, unfortunately, didn't perform well, but they did make it to the Super 8s, but it wasn't convincing, and they bowed out in straight sets in the Super 8 stage of the T20 World Cup last year, Bangladesh. So it has been a poor couple of tournaments for them in recent times. Also, no Hassan Ali or Liton Das in their squad. Both of them have had some problems with their form. Shakib Al Hassan, he's been reported for a suspect bowling action, so that's why he's not here. Liton Das, the wicketkeeper, he's done well for Bangladesh over the last few years, but he's been left out because of his poor form in ODI cricket of late. The last 7 ODI games that he's played for Bangladesh, he's only made 6 single-digit scores, which is not a good thing going into a tournament. So that's why he's been left out. Bangladesh, yeah, it's going to be tough for them. I do see them struggling in this group. You have Pakistan, India, New Zealand, which are very tough opponents. And Bangladesh are not really playing well at the moment. So it's very important for Bangladesh to be competitive at least. I think there's no real expectations on them to win the tournament. They've got players who, can perform with the bat and the ball. We've seen that over the years. But whether or not Bangladesh can put a complete performance together and challenge, definitely be competitive or challenge either New Zealand, Pakistan, or India in Group A will be the question. But they've been poor for some time, Bangladesh, and they've just been inconsistent when it comes to ICC tournaments over the last couple of years or so, with the 50-over World Cup in 2023 and the T20 World Cup last year in the West Indies and the USA. So not really expecting much from Bangladesh. It's probably going to be a disappointing Champions Trophy for them, but if they can show some competitiveness, be competitive, show a bit of fight, a bit of spirit, I think that will be a good result for them, Bangladesh. But I don't see them qualifying for the semis. I probably don't see them winning the game, to be honest. But, who knows? You never know until the tournament starts how a team will perform. But we shall see what happens with Bangladesh. They've got some work to do if they are going to be competitive and to win a game in this Champions Trophy. But only time will tell at the end of the tournament whether or not Bangladesh have had a pretty good tournament or a tournament that has been pretty disappointing. We shall see. Let's move on and talk about Group B and talk about Group B's teams in this Champions Trophy, talk about their chances of winning this Champions Trophy. So Group B has Australia, England, South Africa, and Afghanistan. We'll start with Australia and talk about their chances in this Champions Trophy. The captain is Steve Smith for this Champions Trophy, replacing Pat Cummins, who's been ruled out because of injury. Australia have won 2 ICC Champions Trophies. back in 2006 and 2009. Those tournaments were back-to-back. So Australia is one of the teams, I think they're the only team really to win back-to-back Champions Trophies in the history of the Champions Trophy. And in the 2017 Champions Trophy in England, they finished in the group stage. It wasn't a great tournament for Australia that year in 2017. The squad that Australia have selected is as follows: Smith, Carey, Fraser McGurk, Head, Inglis, Labuschagne, Short, Abbott, Hardy, Maxwell, Dwarshuis, Ellis, Johnson, Sanger, and Samper. And that's the squad that Australia have selected for this Champions Trophy. Now, coming into this tournament, Australia have selected a squad that has been depleted because of many injuries and withdrawals and retirements. Pat Cummins is injured. Josh Hazlewood is injured. Mitchell Starc is not injured. He pulled out because of personal reasons, which are yet to be disclosed, but are private and should remain private. That's not for us to divulge and discuss those with Mitchell Starc. Let's hope everything's okay there. And obviously Marcus Stoinis was named in the squad, but retired from ODI cricket. And he retired before the tournament even started from his one-day career. So it's a pretty depleted squad for Australia, not so much with the batting, but with the bowling. You've got Nathan Ellis, Spencer Johnson, Tanveer Sanger, who haven't played a lot of international cricket for Australia, especially one-day cricket. They've been quite limited in that experience. Going into the tournament, Australia lost 2-0 to Sri Lanka. They also had a bit of a tough series there in Sri Lanka recently in the lead-up to this tournament. They lost 2-0. It was a pretty underwhelming performance across the two games against Sri Lanka. But let's be honest, it was in Sri Lanka on those difficult pitches that turn, and the Sri Lankan spinners really dominated the Australian batters. So very different conditions from Sri Lanka to Pakistan, where pitches are going to be a lot flatter, not much going to be for the spinners in terms of the spin and turn there. So different conditions from Sri Lanka to Pakistan. So let's take that with a grain of salt when Australia lost 2-0 there in Sri Lanka. But still, it wasn't good to lose 2-0. They also lost 2-1 to Pakistan in that ODI series in the home summer before the Test series against India. So they haven't really performed well of late in one-day cricket, Australia. The last series they won in one-day cricket was back in September of last year, where they played England in a 5-game series, and they won that series 3-2 in the end. So that's the last series they've won in one-day cricket. But yeah, expectations for Australia are always high in tournaments. Of course, people expect Australia to do well and win, but the expectations going into this tournament is quite different, given that, they're missing Cummins, Starc and Hazlewood. I don't think Marcus Stoinis is a big loss. He didn't really do much in one-day cricket, if we're honest. The only one thing he did was that 100 he scored in Auckland in 2017, which was a very good game of cricket at the time. Nearly got Australia over the line, but Australia lost that game after Josh Hazlewood was run out by Kane Williamson. And Marcus Stoinis was not out in the end with a terrific 100. Apart from that, he's played a few innings. He scored some 50s and took wickets, but he didn't really do anything special, Marcus Stoinis. So I don't think he's a big loss. I don't think. But mainly Cummins, Starc and Hazlewood are a big loss in terms of that experience with the bowling, especially Mitchell Starc, who has done quite well in ICC tournaments over the last few years. He's been the leading wicket taker for Australia in, a couple of World Cups in the past. And certainly in the last World Cup, he had a role to play as well when Australia won in 2023. So it will be tested, this Australian squad, not so much the batting, but the bowling. Obviously, Adam Zampa will have to stand up, being the senior bowler. He will have to stand up. Glenn Maxwell as well will have to stand up in terms of, bowling his off spin and providing that double-edged sword with his batting, but also his off spin. Both Adam Zampa and Glenn Maxwell are the leading wicket takers for Australia in this ODI squad in terms of the bowling. Both of them have got over many wickets in ODI cricket. Adam Zampa's got over 150 odd wickets in ODI cricket. Glenn Maxwell's got 70 wickets, I think, in ODI cricket. So they are the leading wicket takers for Australia in this bowling attack without Cummins, Stark and Hazlewood. But the bowlers that Australia have selected, Nathan Ellis, we know what he can do. He's a very good T20 bowler, but he can get the job done. Spencer Johnson can bowl quick, and he's got that left arm sort of feature like Mitchell Stark has. So he can bowl fast and quick, Spencer Johnson. He can definitely be effective with the left arm variation. Ben Dorshus has done well in the Big Bash. He's scored some runs with the bat and also taken some wickets. Tavia Sanger, early in his career, but he can provide a support role for Adam Zampa if Australia do decide to play two spinners. I don't think they will, but depends on conditions. If that's the case, he can provide some support there. Sean Abbott, he's been a bit expensive with the ball in one-day cricket of late, Sean Abbott. His comedy rate and bowling average has gone sky high. So he will need to rectify that in this tournament. Aaron Hardy, the all-rounder, early in his career as well. So he will need to stand up with both bat and ball. So the one thing that will be tested for Australia is definitely the bowling attack. Without Stark, Hazlewood and Cummins, they really got to stand up, got to take wickets, got to bowl well, keep it tight, bowl well at the death. So that will be tested. But with the batting side of things, you've got batters who are pretty good. You've got Steve Smith, who's in excellent form at the moment, following his recent run of form with hundreds in Test cricket against India and Sri Lanka. Alex Carey, he's batting well, just coming off a superb 100 against Sri Lanka in the second Test there. Travis Head, we know what Travis Head can do. Josh Inglis, we know what he can do in the limited over formats for Australia. Marnus Labuschagne's bit up and down, but he did play an important role for Australia in the 2023 World Cup, especially in the final with Travis Head in that partnership. Matt Short, Jake Fraser-McGurk have been disappointing, but a good opportunity for those two to really step up and, really get their act together, really. Both of them have been disappointing when playing one-day cricket for Australia. They've gotten out in poor dismissals, just not really taking the time or the effort to get in and get set. So they will need to stand up if they do get an opportunity in this Champions Trophy for Australia. And then you've got Glenn Maxwell, who can do Glenn Maxwell things. Look at what he did in the 2023 World Cup. That wonderful 200 against Afghanistan, out of this world. So Australia do have match winners there with the bat. It's just about doing the basics right. Building partnerships and getting in, getting set, going on to score big scores. So out of this squad, Australia do have experience in terms of tournament experience. You got Smith, Carey, Head, Inglis, Labuschagne, Maxwell, Zampa. They were a part of the winning World Cup squad in 2023 in India. So Australia do have experience when it comes to tournaments, obviously, in that regard. With the others, it's their first time playing an ICC tournament. For some of them, like Ben Dorshus, Spencer Johnson in particular, Nathan Ellis, Matt Short, Jake Fraser-McGurk, Hardy, they were a part of the T20 World Cup last year for Australia. So it's not their first time of an ICC tournament, but for some of the squad, it's their first time playing in a major tournament like this. So it's definitely a different Australian squad. It's an Australian squad that's sort of looking towards the future, if we're honest, because in another couple of years, maybe Hazlewood and Stark in particular, maybe Pat Cummins maybe still be playing ODI cricket in the years to come. But, with Hazlewood and Stark, they'll probably, step back from one-day cricket to prolong their Test careers. So it's a good opportunity for Ellis, Spencer Johnson, Dorshus, Sanger. Good opportunity for them to stand up and step up and make a name for themselves. So Australia have got what it takes. We know with Australia, when they've been weakened, people write them off. Let's go back to the 2023 World Cup. Going into that tournament, Australia were playing poorly in one-day cricket. They lost their ODI series against South Africa and India. Going into the tournament, they lost the first two games of the World Cup against India and South Africa, two of the teams that they lost ODI series to going into the tournament. But then they went on the winning streak, and then after that, they won all the games, and they played well in the semi-final and the final. They won the whole tournament. So with everyone saying Australia are rubbish and probably not going to do well in this Champions Trophy, I won't be surprised if they make it to the semi-finals or win the whole thing. So Australia have got that ability to do that. They've got match winners, who are capable of winning games for Australia off their own bat or ball. It's definitely going to be a challenge, but certainly a challenge that Australia will embrace. And you would think in their Group B, they've got England, South Africa, and Afghanistan. You would think the one tough game for Australia there could be, or maybe a couple of tough games, maybe against South Africa and Afghanistan. England, well, I think everyone can beat England in this Champions Trophy. They're not playing well at the moment. So Australia will fancy their chances of qualifying for the semis. If they qualify for the semi-finals, that's a good result. If you make it to a semi-final of a tournament, that's not bad. But if you win the whole tournament, that's even better. So Australia, with a depleted squad, they've got the ability to, perform well if they can really do it. But only time will tell. But we know with Australia, we can't write them off. Even if they have a weakened squad, it's Australia. They always fight. They always scrap. They always, fight until the end, and, they can get the job done. So definitely going to be a bit of a challenge for Australia, more so with the bowling because of no Cummins, Stark and Hazelwood. But the batting, no problems there. They do have some problems in terms of what happened in Sri Lanka and that, but that can be rectified. If they can get the batting right, which they can in terms of, playing the right tempo and doing the basics right, then that will take care of itself. It's just the bowling. So Ellis, Johnson, Dorshas, Adam Zampa's got to lead the way, being the senior bowler. Sanger, if he gets an opportunity. Sean Abbott's got to step up, and Aaron Hardy as well. If they can do that, they can take wickets and compete. So it'll be very interesting to see what Australia do. But mark my words, we can't write them off. Despite the challenges that they have, you never know what Australia are going to do. Even if they are weakened, they tend to play better. When they're under pressure, they tend to play better. When people write them off, they tend to play better because they want to prove a point. And for Australia, they like winning tournaments, and they're definitely going to give it their best shot. And we shall wait and see what happens with Australia in this Champions Trophy in terms of whether or not it was a success or a failure. Only time will tell. Now then, we move on from Australia and we move on to talk about England and talk about England's Champions Trophy chances for 2025. Their captain is Jos Buttler. They have not won an ICC Champions Trophy, England. The Champions Trophy in 2017, they finished in the semi-finals of that home tournament, which was held in England. The squad that they've selected England is as follows: Buttler, Banton, Brooke, Duckett, Root, Salt, Smith, Cass, Livingston, Overton, that's Jamie Overton, Archer, Atkinson, Mahmood, Rashid, and Mark Wood wraps up the squad for England. So England, what can we say about England? They come in under pressure into this tournament, into this Champions Trophy. Their ODI form since the 2023 World Cup hasn't been flash. Josh Buttler is under pressure as captain. Pressure on Brendan McCullum, who's recently taken over the ODI and T20 side of things as coach. He's under pressure because since he's taken over, England have not performed well. Looking to try and introduce Bazball into the ODI setup, which has not worked for England of late. The last two ICC tournaments for England have been poor. The Cricket World Cup in 2023 in India was a poor tournament. The T20 World Cup last year, they made it to the semi-finals, but they sort of weren't convincing on the way to the semi-finals there, England. They were really poor in that tournament. Even though they made it to the semi-finals, they were still poor. They recently lost 3-0 to India in that ODI series in India, so that doesn't bode well going into this tournament. And since 2023 in ODIs, they've played 32 matches. They've won 13. They've lost 18. They've had one no result. So it's a bit of a mixed bag for England in terms of the up and down nature of their one-day cricket. I suppose in a good news, Joe Root returns to the ODI squad for the first time since the World Cup 2 years ago in India. He's definitely going to be an important cog with the bat for for England in terms of providing stability in the batting. And also him and Adil Rashid are probably going to be the two important players for England in this tournament. Obviously, Joe Root with the bat, providing stability and a sense of reassurance with the bat, making sure that England don't lose their way. And you've got Adil Rashid. He's probably going to be the important bowler in this tournament for England. He's a very good leg spinner, as we know. He has a pretty good record in one-day cricket. Going into this tournament, the other bowlers have struggled, like Gus Atkinson, Cass, Jamie Overton, Jofra Archer's getting back into the groove of things after injuries. Mahmood sort of finding his way back into the international setup. So their bowlers are a bit up and down. Mark Wood as well, coming back from injury, and also doesn't really tend to bowl well in the subcontinent, tends to leak runs. We saw that in the World Cup 2 years ago with Mark Wood, tends to bleed runs and leak runs. So Adil Rashid would be very important in terms of their bowling prospects. But really, I don't really see England performing well, just with their form at the moment. It doesn't seem to be clicking, gelling. You've got Brendan McCullum, who's come in as coach, trying to get Bazball into the one-day side. Bazball, white ball version has not really worked out thus far for England. So they've got some problems with their batting. We saw that in the India series where they struggled with the bat. The bowling side of things wasn't really effective. Buttler's captaincy is questioned in terms of, is he really a captain in one-day cricket? Probably not. But who else do you have to take over the mantle? So they have a lot of challenges, England. I do see them struggling in this tournament. But with England, I suppose, there's only one way to go about it, and that's go out there and hope for the best and see what you can do. If you can, pull out some wins here and there, that's a good result. But really, I don't think anyone's really expecting England to go into the business end of this tournament. They've got a lot of challenges and they've got a lot of questions to ask. They haven't got the answers to those questions. So they have to answer them pretty quick. Otherwise, this tournament could be over probably after the first two games, because you can't really afford to lose one game, let alone two, in a Champions Trophy. You only play 3 games, and if they lose 2 games out of the 3, that's pretty much it. So they do go into this tournament under pressure, England, and there is a lot of questions and a lot of pressure. If England don't do well, probably Joss Buttler will probably be sacked as captain. That usually is how it goes when you have a poor tournament. And probably England will probably look elsewhere in terms of their one-day team. This is probably the last straw for England in terms of their one-day cricket. They haven't really performed well since Owen Morgan retired. And since they had him at the helm, they haven't been the same since they won the 2019 World Cup in England when they defeated New Zealand in that epic final at Lord's. They haven't been the same. So, yeah, pressure on Buttler, probably the pressure of his job as captain. Brendan McCullum probably won't lose his job as coach, but he will definitely have more pressure if England don't start winning. So a lot of pressure for England going into this Champions Trophy. They really got to perform well, but I don't see it happening. I don't think they'll probably qualify for the semis, but if they can be competitive, show a bit of competitiveness, I think that's the expectation from England. But we shall wait and see what happens with England going forward in this Champions Trophy. Now then, let's move on and talk about South Africa and talk about their chances of winning this Champions Trophy. Their captain is Temba Bavuma, and they've won an ICC Champions Trophy, South Africa. They won the first ever Champions Trophy, and that was back in 1998 in Bangladesh. They won that tournament. They defeated the West Indies in the final by 4 wickets, and that's the only ICC tournament that South Africa have won in their history. The 2017 Champions Trophy, they finished in the group stage. The squad that they've selected for this Champions Trophy is as follows: Bavuma, Zori, Klaassen, Miller, Rickleton, Stubbs, Van der Dussen, Bosch, Janssen, Markram, Mulder, Maharaj, Ngidi, and Rabada. And it's a pretty good squad. And South Africa have done pretty well of late in ICC tournaments. Going back to the 2023 World Cup in India, They finished in the semi-finals. And last year in the T20 World Cup in the West Indies and the USA, they finished in the final. Unfortunately, they weren't able to win it. They were in a position to win that T20 World Cup final last year against India, but they blew it. And you probably say the same in the ODI World Cup as well in 2023 in that semi-final against Australia. You probably say the same thing. They were outplayed by Australia in that semi-final in Kolkata. So for South Africa going into this tournament, it's probably their best chance of winning the tournament. They come in as one of the favourites, along with India, New Zealand, as probably the three teams that probably most likely could take out the tournament. They have a very good squad in terms of match winners. You've got a lot of match winners there with bat and ball, Klaasen, Miller, Stubbs, Janssen, Markram, Maharaj, Ningidi and Rabada can bowl well. So you've got a squad there that can definitely challenge and definitely win the tournament. But the question is for South Africa, can they shake off the chokers tag? That's the problem with South Africa. We know the history with South Africa in tournaments. They always make semi-finals and finals and they don't get the job done. But with this South African team, they've obviously qualified for the World Test Championship final, which will be against Australia later on this year at Lord's. The last two tournaments I mentioned, they've done well. They've made it to the semi-final and the final of the World Cup and the T20 World Cup in 2023 and 2024. So this South African team have got some momentum behind them, but they haven't been able to do the job. They haven't been able to seal the deal. And that's the problem that they face, South Africa, in terms of the choking tag and trying to get that stigma away from them. So the only tournament they've won is the Champions Trophy, and that's 27 years ago in 1998. That's a long time. It's nearly 30 years. So for for South Africa, I should say, not Australia, it will be their best opportunity to perform and to win this tournament. Going into this tournament, they played the tri-series against Pakistan and South Africa. They didn't win a game in that tournament, but they produced some good performances with certain players there. Obviously, they didn't have many of their Champions Trophy squad playing in that tournament. They had some other players play, resting players and trying different players and that. So that's why they didn't win a game in the tournament. But, good to get some form going into the tournament, I suppose. But for South Africa, they've got a good chance of qualifying from Group B. You've got Australia and England who are not performing well at the moment. Afghanistan could be a difficult challenge, but I think South Africa will fancy their chances of qualifying for the semis. They've got a squad that's capable. Whether or not South Africa can get the job done, that's the question. They've got to get the job done. They've got to finally get over that hurdle and finally win a tournament for the first time in 27 years. But, they come in as one of the favourites. So you never know with South Africa. But, this is their best opportunity of doing it. They've been there and thereabouts. The last two ICC tournaments, they've been at the business end. They haven't been able to finish off the job. So going into this Champions Trophy, it's going to be challenging for South Africa in terms of the expectations, people saying, they'll choke again. And, it's deja vu, it's South Africa. What do you expect? But they do have a squad that's capable. They do have players that can win games with the bat and with the ball. And they've got a good chance of qualifying. So let's see what South Africa can do. And hopefully for them, probably claim their first ICC tournament since 1998 when they won the Champions Trophy. But only time will tell whether or not it has been a successful tournament or a failure for South Africa. Last but not least, from Group B, let's talk about Afghanistan and talk about their chances in this Champions Trophy. Well, their captain is Hasmatullah Shahidi. And for Afghanistan, they have not won a Champions Trophy. They weren't a part of the 2017 Champions Trophy. The squad that they've selected for this Champions Trophy is as follows: Shahidi, Zadran, Ali Kil, Gurbaz, Atul, Ramat Shah, Omatsa, Nabib, Muhammad Nabi, Karoti, Rashid Khan, Ahmed, Faruqi, Naveen Sadran, and Noor Ahmed. And that's the squad that they've selected for this Champions Trophy, Afghanistan. Now, for Afghanistan, it's their first ever Champions Trophy. They have not played in the Champions Trophy before, but during their successful World Cup in the last couple of years, back in 2023, they were able to qualify for the Champions Trophy. And with Afghanistan, they come into this tournament as one of the dark horses. A lot of people are talking about Afghanistan and could say, you know what, they could make it to the semis. They could even make it to the final. They're one of those teams that people should be aware of. And what we've seen from Afghanistan over the years, probably since the 2015 World Cup, from then until now, I should say, they have shown improvement. They have gotten better. Every tournament they've competed in since 2015, in that World Cup, T20 World Cups and World Cups since then, they have improved. We saw that 2 years ago in the World Cup where they won 4 games. They defeated England, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, and the Netherlands in that 2023 World Cup. They nearly took down Australia. But if it wasn't for Glenn Maxwell's 200 and, you know, that drop catch from Majid, but short fine leg off Maxwell, it could have been a different story. But they pushed Australia in that match in Mumbai. But if it wasn't for Glenn Maxwell producing one of the best ever comebacks and one of the best innings you'll ever see in one-day cricket's history, it could have been a different story. But with Afghanistan, they've done really well. So the World Cup 2 years ago, very good tournament. Last year in the T20 World Cup, they made it to the semi-finals. Unfortunately, they couldn't defeat South Africa. It was a very challenging surface in that semi-final against South Africa last year. But for Afghanistan, they did well in the Super 8s of that tournament. They defeated Australia, so I suppose they got their revenge after what happened with Maxwell in the World Cup 2 years ago. They got their revenge at the T20 World Cup, defeated Australia in the Super 8 stage, and then they were able to qualify for the semi-finals. So Afghanistan are one of those teams that you can't take them for granted. They're no pushovers anymore in ICC tournaments. They have improved. They've definitely improved under the coaching of Jonathan Trott, one of England's great players. Definitely his influence and mentorship has definitely helped Afghanistan in terms of their development over the few years. Since he's taken over the job, they've gotten better. They've really improved. And they've got match winners. You know, they've got winners who can win, you know, with the bat and with the ball. You've got Gurbaz, who can do well at the top of the order. Ibrahim Sadran, you know, he scored many runs opening the batting for Afghanistan. You've got Mohammad Nabi, who's a veteran. You've got Rashid Khan, who's pretty good, as we know. So they've got players who can perform well and definitely test many teams in this tournament. So for Afghanistan, if they can put it together, get a collected performance together, they can definitely challenge in this Champions Trophy. They can definitely cause some problems. They can definitely, you know, really upset some teams in this tournament. And who knows? They may make it to the semis. They may make it to the final. You never know. They're one of those teams that are unpredictable and you don't know what's going to happen. But they are an improved team. They have improved and they have definitely improved as a cricketing side. So Afghanistan, beware of Afghanistan in this tournament. But they do have a good opportunity of qualifying probably for the semi-finals. Probably them and South Africa maybe in Group B. Australia and England are in different points of their ODI cricket at this stage, you know, out of form, obviously missing players. So Afghanistan will fancy their chances, no doubt, in this Champions Trophy. But we will have to wait and see what happens at the end of this tournament, whether or not Afghanistan had a successful tournament or a tournament that they will be disappointed in terms of their overall performances. Now then, we reach the point in the episode where we do our predictions for the Champions Trophy for 2025. Let's do our predictions and predict who will qualify from the group stage to the semi-finals, plus the leading run scorer and leading wicket taker for the tournament, and the team who is going to win the Champions Trophy for 2025. So let's do our predictions. Now, in terms of semi-finals, let's do that. In terms of the semi-finals. Now then, we'll start from Group A in terms of who will qualify from there to the semi-finals. I've gone with India to qualify as one of the teams. Obviously, India, one of the favourites. They look really strong. They will be there in the semi-finals, no doubt, you would think. The other team will be interesting, either New Zealand or Pakistan. Bangladesh, not so much because of their poor showing of late. So it's going to be a battle between New Zealand and Pakistan. But I've gone with New Zealand as the second team in Group A. I think New Zealand have got a squad that's capable of winning this tournament. Pakistan, you never know with them, either hit or miss. Which Pakistan are we going to get? Are we going to get the good Pakistan or the bad Pakistan? That's the thing with Pakistan. They're not really consistent. But I've gone with India and New Zealand to be my semi-finalists from Group A. Group B, Group B, quite an interesting one. A lot of people have said it's probably the toughest group of the Champions Trophy. You've got Australia, England, South Africa, Afghanistan. I've gone with South Africa. I think they're pretty strong. They're probably the strongest team in Group B. And when you look at it in terms of the other teams, Australia and England, missing players, not really playing well. Afghanistan, if they get it right on the day, they can be dangerous. But I've gone with South Africa as my semi-finalists from Group B. The other semi-finalists, very interesting. A lot of people would say Afghanistan, based on how well they've played and how well they've done. But you've also got Australia and England. Yes, they're missing some players. Yes, they're not playing well at the moment. But come a tournament, it's a very different situation. I'm probably going to go with Australia, even though Australia are weakened and they don't have the players. They don't have Cummins, Stark, and Hazelwood. If they make it to the semis, so be it. It's probably either going to be Australia or Afghanistan for that second spot. I don't really see England doing well. So I've gone with probably Australia from Group B. Maybe that's just me saying Australia because I support Australia. But who knows for that second spot? It could be Afghanistan. Who knows? So for Group B, I've gone with South Africa and Australia. Let's see. It's only a prediction. So let's see how that turns out at the end of the tournament. So semi-finalists, India, Pakistan, South Africa and Australia in terms of semi-finalists predictions. The winner of the tournament, I'm going to go with India. They look pretty strong. India, one of the favorites to win. You have a look at their squad. It's pretty strong on paper. Whether or not they can get the job done, what happened in the World Cup 2 years ago will probably still linger in their memories. What happened when they lost to Australia in the final. But, there's some other teams that can compete. New Zealand, South Africa, probably the other favorites as well. But I've gone with India in terms of their strength and what they're capable of doing there. So I've gone with India to probably win the whole tournament. For me, leading run scorer, leading wicket takers. Now, we've got quite a few very good batters and bowlers in this tournament. So we'll start with the leading run scorer. That's an interesting one. Leading run scorer. Ooh, you got so many to choose from. I'm going to go with Heinrich Klaasen from South Africa. He's done pretty well. He's scored a lot of runs in the last two tournaments for South Africa. And if South Africa are a good chance of winning the tournament, they probably need Heinrich Klaasen to do really well. So I'm going to go with Heinrich Klaasen as my leading run scorer, based on what he's done in the past before in the last couple of ICC tournaments. Now, in terms of leading wicket taker, that's an interesting one again. There's quite a few good bowlers in this tournament. Don't know, really. That's a difficult one. But for the sake of the prediction, I'll choose one anyway. Who will it be in terms of the leading wicket taker for the tournament? Well, I'm going to go with another South African. I've already gone with Heinrich Klaasen as my leading run scorer. I'm going to go with another South African again from a leading wicket taker. I'm going to go with Kagiso Rabada. He's a very good bowler. He's taken a lot of wickets of late. And obviously, along with him and Klaasen, going to be very important for South Africa's chances in this tournament. So I'm going to go with Kagiso Rabada for the sake of this prediction. So a couple of South Africans there for me for leading run scorer and leading wicket taker for the Champions Trophy. If you're listening to this episode and you're listening to our ICC Champions Trophy 2025 preview on the Dibbly Dobbly Podcast YouTube channel, let us know in the comments your predictions for the teams to qualify for the semi-finals, who will win the Champions Trophy, leading run scorer and leading wicket taker for the tournament. We would love to hear what you have to say. So let us know in the comments your predictions for the ICC Champions Trophy for 2025. Now then, to finish up our preview of this Champions Trophy for 2025, some of my final thoughts and what to expect from this tournament, just to end on. This Champions Trophy is so important for Pakistan. Having been deprived of cricket in Pakistan for so long, this tournament is vital to get people back into cricket in Pakistan. Let's hope we see some exciting cricket across this Champions Trophy. With one-day cricket at an interesting juncture, with the rise of T20 cricket, can the Champions Trophy reinvigorate one-day cricket? Only time will tell. And it's sure to be a very interesting tournament. It always is when the Champions Trophy is on. It's a very short, sharp, and quick tournament. 8 teams. You can't afford to lose a game, can't afford to slip up. So it is going to be a very interesting tournament. Let's hope we have some good one-day cricket, and may the best team win at the end of the day, because it is going to be a very exciting Champions Trophy. Let's hope that's the case in 2025. Thanks everyone for listening to our preview of the ICC Champions Trophy for 2025. If you're watching or listening to this episode of the podcast on our YouTube channel, let us know your thoughts on this ICC Champions Trophy for 2025 in the comments. We would love to hear what you have to say. Make sure you subscribe to the Dibbly Dobbly Podcast YouTube channel so you don't miss out on our coverage of the ICC Champions Trophy for 2025. Thanks for watching and listening. Until next time, keep safe and bye for now.